Welcome, everybody, to the Celebrity Hour podcast. I'm Bryan Kluger, and we have an amazing, fantastic show today. We have a legendary world heavyweight champion of music, film composing, and jazz guitar coming to the show today, Mr. Joseph LODUCA. Welcome to the show.
I've never been in a wrestling ring before. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
Based on that introduction.
To the squared circle of music, we are going to have an amazing time. We're going to be talking about your new film, Hereafter.
I need you to listen to me. A truck hit your car.
What?
You're dead, Michael.
No, I can't be dead. I got stuff to do.
Unfortunately, you died single.
So?
Souls cross over in pairs.
Angelo!
Michael!
You have to find a soulmate.
You're dead!
Yeah.
You look great! This is fantastic! I'm so glad you're dead!
So I just ask dead girls on dates?
Sure, why not?
How do I find someone if I don't see anybody most of the time?
Come on, don't be dumb. Just squint really hard and you see whoever you want.
Sorry.
I met this girl, and I really feel like she's the one, you know? She's everything.
Are you worried a new dead guy will show up and sweep me off my feet?
Yeah, little. Net looks flimsy. I don't even know why we haven't been whisked up into the sky or whatever happens.
For some reason, you don't match the criteria.
Yeah, we're not soulmates. Sorry.
What, do you think even the universe thinks you're too good for me?
Hey, watch it.
Well, because I'm alive and you're dead.
So what exactly happens if I don't find a soulmate?
You cease to exist, and the world goes on without you, as always.
How much time do we have?
It's like life. Nobody knows, and everybody gets a different amount.
Oh! I mean, why can you hear me? Why can you see me? Why do you understand this?
I've just been seeing this stuff a lot lately.
Normally, it's not possible to bond with someone who's on the other side of the line, but she's close.
What does that mean?
It means she's going to die soon.
So I have to let something terrible happen so I can hope that it means we work out for each other? I mean, she still has her whole life. I can't let her die.
This isn't going to work out for you the way you want it to. You can't change destiny.
Michael, this is my friend Faith, and Faith, this is my newly deceased friend Michael.
I am missing Pilates for this.
Who we talked with Harry Greenberger recently, but also we're going to get into the scores that really put you on the map, including The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. Brotherhood of the Wolf, The Staircase Murders, Man with the Screaming Brain, Chucky films, Spartacus, the list goes on. But first, like in the movie The Sound of Music, we've got to start at the very beginning. Joe, where did it all begin for you in music? Was there a certain song on the radio? Did your parents play you something on the turntable that just sparked that firework for music? Where did it all begin for you in music?
You have to go back to the very beginning. Boy, I would just say that music has always been in my life. It's always affected me. And it's always something that I just got. I could understand it. I could hear it. I could reproduce it. I could mimic. There's pictures of me on the table at 2 and 3 on the dining room table singing songs. So I mean, it just has always been a part of my being. And at some point, midway through my second year of college, I actually couldn't deny it and said, I'm gonna follow this. I'm going to do this wherever it leads me. So
Very. That's where it led. So, do you remember the first instrument you picked up?
Well, actually, my first instrument was voice because I was in the boys' choir at church.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Until my voice changed and then he had to kick me out.
Was that something you wanted to do, or is that something your parents said, like, you got to go do something?
I didn't resist. I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed
Yeah.
it? So voice, and then, getting into, maybe middle school.
Yeah, that led to piano. That led to piano, and it led to cello, and then that led to rock and roll.
To rock and roll.
Yeah, because once that all hit, and I was in middle school, high school, that was really my focus in terms of music. I had a lot more fun being in bands, making up bands, playing in bands, wearing the grooves off of vinyl records, because that's how you learned back in those days. And it was great fun.
Where was the first place you played in a band, and what was the band name called?
Well, that's very funny. I was in several, but I think the first band, when we were in middle school, we had a band called the Condors. And I think our first gig for $25 a piece was at a Friday night fish fry. And and we had, it was great because we had a band mom. We had a band mom who bought a milk truck, and that's how we transported the gear. We won a couple of Battle of the Band concerts, which got us our gear. And then in high school, I joined another band called the Weekend Freedom Machine, which sounds great for a band in the 60s, but actually it was the slogan for Toro lawnmowers. So our band manager would leave cards, you'd have business cards, and he'd leave them on windshields in the parking lot. And in Detroit, I was raised in Detroit. And at that time, because of the White Panthers and other movements going on, the FBI had a certain focus on the underground music scene in Detroit. So I remember an agent calling my mom on the telephone, asking to speak with with Joe, whose number was on the business card. And my mom was puzzled, handed me the phone, and yeah, you can talk to him. And so he said, "Is this Joe?" And I said, "Yes, sir." So he realized he'd been barking up the wrong tree.
Oh my. And I've got to say that it doesn't get more rock and roll than traveling around in a milk truck. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it worked.
It worked. And you were playing guitar in all of this?
Yeah, I was playing guitar, I sang, played harmonica, and we were cute kids who could play, basically. And so we would be, at that time, there was a very, very vibrant club scene. So this is prior to, say, Bob Seger and Ted Nugent and the MC5 and Rick Derringer becoming national phenoms. So we would be like the first warm-up act when they were just
to Bob Seger and Ted Nugent?
Well, not together, but those would be the headliners at these clubs.
Okay.
But we were underage, so we'd be like, when they first opened the club, we'd play our set, and they'd come on at 11 or whatever. you know.
Oh my! Did you ever get to cross paths or with
Well,
Bob or Ted?
kind of, sort of, but we didn't. It isn't like we hung out. Were in the same space. I can say that. But
Oh,
yeah.
you were the opening act for them.
But we
That's
got to be, yeah. But we would get, but obviously we're very much imprinted by the antics. So
And were you doing original music or doing covers or a
some,
mix of both?
but mostly we'd do a lot of covers, but then rearrangements as well.
Okay.
Obviously with blues and British influenced, and yeah, all of that.
And if you don't mind me asking, do you still keep in touch with the original bandmates of the Condors or?
It was a different life. We've all gone our separate ways.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great to hear. And so you moved on and you went to the University of Michigan and I believe New York. And is that where your love of film and music collided?
No, I moved to New York to basically pursue a career in music as a working musician, um, thinking that going to the Apple would be a great place to test my mettle, especially because I really wanted to play jazz, and I wanted to study particularly with a guitarist composer, a man named Ralph Towner, who was really great who is a fantastic musician. Besides being a great composer, is a pianist and also plays fingerstyle on acoustic, classical, and 12-string guitar. And that was very much something I was into at the time, because there weren't a lot of jazz programs. There were a few in the country. There weren't a lot of places to study classical guitar, and one of them happened to be in Michigan. So I was very lucky there. That was one of the few classical guitar programs. So you'd really, for example, at the University of Michigan, where I started college, there was no classical guitar program. There'd be no way to study that instrument and be part of the music school. So it worked out very, very well. And then from that, like I said, I really wanted to see what it was like in New York City, which was a great experience. But film composing really didn't begin when I returned and was introduced to Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and Rob Tapert.
And that was in Michigan. And I believe, did you come across them by just word of mouth, or their studio, or they were working next to a magic store, right, where you can perform magic or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I came back as a working musician, but still I hadn't finished school yet. So I was studying composition and performance, but still, playing for a living, really, at nights and weekends. And got into doing some studio work and met a producer who was also a filmmaker, who was also involved in helping Rob and Sam and Bruce raise some money to finish Evil Dead. And he made the fortuitous introduction.
And from then, it was like peas in a pod. It seems like y'all just became instant friends, correct?
Well, I think the idea was we were both just at the beginning of our careers. Sam and Bruce had a lot of experience making Super 8 films and pursuing this as a very, very serious hobby. And we're embarking on their first feature. And I was seriously studying music and about to, try to launch after receiving my credentials. And so we went on that part of the journey together.
That's pretty impressive, and that's just great that there has to be some magical chemistry between y'all, because you've worked so many times over the years together. And what do you think that spark was? Maybe when you first walked in with Bruce and Sam and Rob, that you're just like, okay, I might do this one film, but then something about being together with everyone, we have worked together on multiple projects. Was there that spark?
Well, I think the spark was, um, fortunately, I had enough musical chops, even though I had to really figure out with very primitive tools how to make music to picture, because it wasn't like it was now with digital files and DAWs and such. Um, but also, I think there was the idea that I didn't realize that I had the ability to understand how to apply music to a story. Um, and again, I had gone to university actually to pursue comparative literature. And so I did have a literature background. I did have kind of a storytelling background, but I didn't realize that. And I suppose the spark was, for me, the ability to look at an image in a story and be affected by it, and to come up with something that would enhance the vision of the storyteller. So, I got lucky. I was developing a set of skills and really wasn't aware of how to apply them, in terms of, I didn't grow up in LA. There were at that point, I think there might have been a film scoring program at Eastman, certainly one at North Texas, but they were very, very early stages. I don't even think the one at USC or UCLA, the ones there, had been created yet. So you really had to be raised in the business to realize that this was even a career path. And, in Detroit, that really wasn't really wouldn't have been a career option. It would have never crossed my mind. Of course, it's so different nowadays, as you're certainly well aware.
Right, right. And so I guess with your first film, or with the first Evil Dead film, how have things changed for you personally in regards to making music with those sort of old school, those vintage toys of your craft to now? Because I would have, and did did Sam Raimi actually just give you free range, like go for it, do it, or did he have a lot of input over the years, as well as Bruce? Or were you just like, okay, I'm going to go in this, I'm going to get some nature sounds, I'm going to get these orchestral sounds for this? How did that all come together for your first time?
Well, I think I've been really fortunate over the years to work with people who really love music. So that's great to have them as collaborators. Sam loves music. Um, you've met Harry. Harry loves music. Dean Devlin, who I've worked with for many years, loves music. Rob Tappert on the television series loves music. And while none of them claim to be able to speak a musical language, they certainly understand and put a lot of time and effort into the stories that they make. So it's been my job to just basically try to make that translation. So, for example, in Evil Dead, it was Sam that turned me on to a lot of Bernard Herrmann and John Williams, because I hadn't really, it isn't as though I knew that music from the movies, but I wasn't really paying attention to it as such. I was learning jazz, that vocabulary. I was studying classical music and composition. So, I could see Bernard Herrmann's influence from Wagner or from Debussy, and I could see, I would make that sort of leap. And so Sam was a big fan of that music. As it turned out for Evil Dead, we had a limited budget, so it was simple. Okay, well, I'll have 5 string players and I'm going to overdub them, and once, and whatever else I can make, noises I can make, that's going to be the film score, and that's going to have to be it. And so that was, as the wonderful thing about composition is you set your limitations and run with them.
It worked perfectly. Worked perfectly. And then, you went on to do Hercules and Xena and Jack of All Trades, which working with the same people. Is there a difference or proclivity you have to working on feature films to television shows? Is there more of a story to tell with a long-running TV show or the 2-hour span of a film that you prefer?
Well, I suppose it depends. I think that very often, obviously, with film, you're drawing out a single story.
Mhm.
So generally speaking, you've got more landscape, if you will, and you have the opportunity, perhaps, to create an entire world, a complete compositional world, if you will. And with television, you're beholden to the story. Things are going to move faster. You've got to be more on your toes. And it depends. I only recently, for example, because I've been spending more time in Los Angeles, do some music for sitcoms, which was fun. But that's a 3-pound weight as opposed to barbells, that you would get on a show like Ash versus Evil Dead or Hercules or Xena or that, or, action Spartacus, action oriented, where you're going to have major themes, major drama, major operatic content. So my diet has been in shows that have a lot of music in them and usually require a very big palette.
That's
I don't know if I've answered the question, Brian. I'm sorry.
No, you have, and I like that you have that ability to go from something like Mystery Glacius to like Brotherhood of the Wolf, or either Curse of Chucky, and even the new film Hereafter, which is, you're drawing from a lot of elements and you put them together so flawlessly. Is there a moment in time when you're working on a score where you just kind of step outside your body and look down and you're like, yep, I got it. This is it.
Well, yeah, I think that's the, other than, hearing the orchestra play back the music for the first time, I think that the satisfaction in the work is that moment where you think you've got it, and then it's even better when your collaborator feels the same way. But I think it's solving, finding a way to put yourself in a creative zone to solve that particular problem, because it's a blank page every day.
Right. No, it is. It is. And is there a particular place you personally like to be, whether it be on stage with a guitar or conducting in front of an orchestra or being behind a computer and making the film music to its finish? Is there a particular place you would rather be?
Well, I think that it's two sides of a coin, really.
Uh-huh.
I think the creation has its own satisfactions and its own challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what's been fun for me in recent years is that there is still an interest in this music that I did even for Evil Dead. I mean, before the pandemic, we did a live performance of the score in Melbourne with the Melbourne Symphony. So to take that music over there, to find out we had fans, to see the musicians that were actually really into the music, that's very gratifying as a composer. And, to be able to take it out and to show it to people and have them respond to it and enjoy it. To create a balance between the two is great. But let's face it, if you choose a life as a film composer, you're going to be in a room creating, and that's your lot. And so you have to be okay with that. Because I think that I made the choice long ago that I wasn't going to be a musician whose life was going to be on the road, that I was going to have a family and I was going to have a job, if you will, in music that enabled me to be around a lot.
No, that's cool. And going back to your mentor, that teacher you mentioned earlier on the show, you know, I think teachers are great, are so wonderful to help shape the creative minds of artists. And was there ever a piece of advice that you received that still sticks with you, that puts you on this path?
Well, that's a real interesting question. I think that if you have, if you will, you call it the spark, if you have that within you, just being around someone who has dedicated themselves to the pursuit and has discovered these things along their journey and have a particular perspective that they've developed, right? You're going to get that by osmosis. So I think, you know, just like anything, if you're around people whose game is high, they're going to up your game. And that goes for filmmakers as well. Any type of collaborator, really.
All right, all right. I like, oh yeah, being in a room and it's like it creates the ideas. I enjoy that. Also, I want to go back to the Melbourne thing. You revisited and got to kind of remake, redo, reboot the scores to these movies you did. Oh my God, has it been 30, 40 years ago? What's that like? What's coming back to your original starting point and getting to revisit and redo this and put it in front of an audience? What was that like?
You know, it was just a little, it was an idea that I had. I get these ideas from time to time. But over the year, Evil Dead just doesn't, it just doesn't die, right? As you said, 40 years plus, and it's still making the rounds every Halloween. And it still appears high on the lists of the greatest horror films of all time. And it occurred to me at some point that, you know, it was my very first film score. It's probably, oddly enough, probably some of my best known work. And so it was very strange to consider that. And then when I was often approached to re-release the recording, it occurred to me to have this idea where that if I had that same ensemble, what might I do with it today, right? And some of the sounds, for example, that are available to us through the software today, how would I approach that? So I wrote a suite away from picture. I took it to Mondo Records, who's, as you know, and probably your fans know, it's this great vinyl company out of Austin through Alamo Drafthouse. And they had suggested, oh, wow, why don't we do this to picture? And why don't we put on a concert? And we'll do 2 nights and we'll film it. And of course, they really don't know how to do that. That's not their focus. But they put that idea in my head. So this suite that I wrote, I had turned it into the full score and took it to my agent. And they said, let's put on a show. So we actually did do it in Los Angeles at the old United Artists Theater downtown LA, which is now called the Ace Hotel. And we put on this fun concert. Bruce Campbell was our MC for the night. And we played it live to picture, as folks are doing nowadays. And we had so much fun with it that one of the companies that takes these ideas on the road followed up with selling it to Melbourne. And we were off and running, and probably, had the pandemic not happened, we would have probably performed it the following year and the following year. But it was the idea of revisiting it and writing some different music for that ensemble, because I've done a fair amount of horror over the years and always get a full orchestra, which is wonderful. But I think the chamber idea is creepy, in many ways creepier. So I thought that to prove it to myself and maybe somebody else that it was also a valid approach, it inspired me to write that.
and then the results, I mean, it went gangbusters.
Well, it was fun, and it's a double album on Mondo, and they've sold a lot of them. And in fact, you mentioned you're in Dallas. We were at it was some sort of Comic-Con in Dallas again before the pandemic, and they had me come out for a signing, and Bruce and Sam and Teddy were there, and so it was it was a fun get together.
Excellent, excellent. And I gotta say that the Mondo version of Army of Darkness is fantastic, and it is from Mondo with the Seattle Symphony. And I just can't say enough about Army of Darkness because it is the #1 personal favorite film of all time and one of my favorite scores of all time, because the mix ingredients of the medieval and the horror and the romantic and the comedy and the drama, it's like every genre at once into this film score, and you did it perfectly. And
Well, thank you. Yes, it is a soup to nuts adventure for sure.
Because Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2, and then years later everybody got to come back for Army of Darkness for a bigger budget, for a big kind of like sweeping epic of a film. Can you talk a little bit about that Army of Darkness work? And then did you actually get to collaborate as much as you did on Evil Dead 1 and 2 and the other projects with Sam, Rob, and Bruce, as well as Danny Elfman, who did one particular track?
Well, actually, the most involved in any of the collaborations with Sam was the pilot for Ash versus Evil Dead of all the years of all the time, because he's usually so busy that by the time he gets to post, he's on to the next thing. So, and I think Army of Darkness, we were definitely in separate cities. That was the other thing. So I think I was trying to remember. I was trying to remember, we were still technologically not at the point where, for example, I could send him a video clip with a demo. So
because this is 92, 93, right?
Yeah, but the distance and the technology and such, I forget what kind of review process we had. There wasn't much, but I kind of got a sense what the animal was. It was very, it was sort of, I saw it as the horror elements aside, an homage to, say, the Harryhausen film.
The Sinbad, yeah.
Yeah. And certainly the fight with the skeletons,
Yes.
So, and so I approached it like that, as sort of that sort of adventure epic. And so I kind of knew in my bones what that sounded like and went for that type of sound. And then the horror elements were the horror elements. The comic elements, there's that, I don't know, in the middle of the movie, there's this crazy Three Stooges with miniature, little Lilliputian Bruce's ashes. So there's that. So it becomes a cartoon, basically.
It really works well. And when people haven't seen Army of Darkness, I describe it as all genres of film and music coming together as one to make the perfect film. And when they see it, they're like, yep, that was a correct description.
It's fun. Yeah, well, that's another one. It's a little more ambitious, but that might be one that would be interesting to prepare again for a concert. That would be fun. I think that'd be fun.
I sure hope so, because I guess the 30-year anniversary is coming up.
Yeah.
And I would, yes. Oh my goodness. That'll be amazing. Yeah. And I actually, when you mentioned Ash vs. Evil Dead, I actually got to sit down and talk with Bruce about it. And he's such a fun, and he talked about the music and everything about that, and coming back to the role. But he's a wonderful guy, as I know you know.
Oh yes, oh yes. We saw one another recently. We hung out. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
working on a project together.
it's pretty great. And let's talk about the new film Hereafter by Harry Greenberger. This amazing romantic comedy that just goes in a different direction with the sci-fi, little horror and comedy elements. Talk about coming aboard on that film, and doing the music for that.
Well, I was introduced to Harry through Angelo Badalamenti, the
Yes,
composer.
who does David Lynch's stuff, right?
All of David Lynch's stuff. And it turns out, we found out many years ago that we are actually cousins.
Really?
And we only found out about that because we were introduced by my agent, because we have the same agent.
Okay.
But within minutes, we found out that actually, our heritages are from the same little town of 3,000 in Sicily. And of course, connecting the dots wasn't that hard. So we've worked on some projects together over the years. And Angelo was introduced to Harry. And I think at the time, Angelo didn't think he could take on the project. But as Angelo always does, is he said, but you know what, Harry, let's write a song together. There's always going to be a song with Angelo. He's a great songwriter and a fantastic melodist, right? And of course, I can see why Harry was drawn to Angelo. I mean, his music is haunting and romantic and melodic, and it seemed like that would certainly be a great blend for this music about, the dating in the afterlife. And so we met with Harry and kind of went over the film, and it took a while for Harry to put everything together so that we could begin working on the film. And so he and Angelo had written this song, which we didn't know how that was going to fit in at all. But Harry wrote some lyrics, Angelo did the melody, and then it was time to do the score. So there were like 2 cues that Harry did license from Angelo's catalog with David Lynch. And then I wrote the remainder of the score. And what's great about Harry is he really, really loves music. He's really, really open. He is really passionate about what he does, and had a great story. He had a great little story. And so we worked on the music intensely for about a month, I think. We had to, for some reason, we had to finish it that quickly, but it wasn't because it's a smaller ensemble. I think I played all the instruments on the score. It's kind of an indie sound, right? Some of it's jazz influenced, which might have been, part of the Angelo idea that Harry was attracted to. And it's a story that takes place in New York City, so that seems totally appropriate. But jazz in a very offhanded way, more in a film score-y way than anything you might recognize as such. And it was a great opportunity to work with Harry because, again, I find Harry very much like a lot of the filmmakers that I work with, that they love music and they might not be able to express anything in musical terms, but that's really never their job. It's my job to be the translator and to try to evoke a language that connects us both, so that I can translate for them. And it worked out very well. As you know, Harry's very verbal, and he had some temp that I don't know that he had a lot of experience with temp, because he was choosing a lot of things, like say there'd be like Pink Floyd things and David Crosby, there'd be like these weird sort of pop things that really didn't work as temp music at all, but you could maybe see that there was some sort of starting point, that you could maybe grasp onto, and then find out the essence of what it was, whether it was the texture or the tempo or something to hook onto, and just kind of go off and do your own thing after that. So it was interesting because he's got some songs too, some really nice songs that work out well with the show, with the love story in and of itself. And writing in and out of those was part of the assignment. But I think that it's a beautiful, sweet story. It is. And it's a very New York story, with New York language. The dialogue and the interplay and the questions and the existential questions asked about being in the afterlife. There's a very hairy New York quality to all of it. I think it's a very entertaining film in that way, and I think people are going to enjoy it.
I think so too. They're definitely going to enjoy the score. And I love that you found your cousin in the same town as Sicily. My grandmother's family and grandmother are from Sicily as well.
Really?
Yes.
What part?
I'm trying to remember what part. You know what? I'm gonna have to get back to you on what part of Sicily, but their names were the Alessis. And they came over, and came over, and a lot of them are still in Brooklyn. So
yeah, well, New York obviously is ground zero for everybody.
Yes, but yeah, a lot of them are in Brooklyn. But yeah, no, we called her the Sicilian godmother, and she every Sunday growing up, she would make the homemade meatballs, sausage.
Right.
We call it the rest stuff. That's what we did as a family every Sunday.
Well, and that's the funny thing is that I understand Angelo's music, I believe, on a genetic level.
There is a genetic thing to music. It really is. And I get it when I hear like these Italian scores or Italian music. It just like the sound brings me back to that place. And I've never been to Sicily, and I've always wanted to go and just hear the music, have the wine, have the food, and just sit out there. One day it'll happen. One day. So let's get into some fun questions. I noticed behind you have some instruments. What is the most curious? What is the strangest instrument you own?
I've got a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them are in cases. You see a little display cabinet behind me that I made up of mostly, I think, flutes, if I were to look at that, or some reed instruments. But, having worked, I guess it started with Hercules, Xena, particularly, Brotherhood of the Wolf for Native American instruments, Spartacus, again, back to the Arabic world, Xena for anything that happened in the globe, because her journeys were to India, to China, to Japan, and so the opportunity was, those assignments were really kind of my degree in ethnomusicology, if you will. So generally, initially, I would hire these virtuosos on these instruments, and then get curious and pick them up myself, and get proficient enough that I could play film score shakuhachi, or film score, duduk, and it just kind of grew from there. I couldn't tell you the most unusual one. There's one that's back there that I think is a very interesting instrument that I really haven't explored, and I'd never heard it on a film score, but I believe I recently heard it and it's called it's a Vietnamese instrument, and it looks like a stack of bamboo pipes, vertical, different lengths, and it's a reed instrument, and you close the holes to be able to articulate a particular reed. You blow into this big thing, and it's covers maybe it's diatonic, and it maybe covers, I don't know, octave and a half. So you play these sonorities with it, right? These different sonorities. And it's really cool. I've never really used it, although I've sampled it. But I believe it's the theme to The Mandalorian.
Okay.
It's that instrument.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. And what is it called again?
Kaen, I
Okay.
believe.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And is that a didgeridoo behind you as well?
Oh yeah, well we got those. We traveled. I took my family to New Zealand when the shows were being filmed, and then we hopped over to Australia as if it were a hop. It's not a hop. You know,
That's a 19-hour
like,
flight.
well, once you get to New Zealand, it's it's whatever it is. It's 5-6 hours to Sydney, Melbourne, and it's another 4 or 5 hours to the Barrier Reef. But I picked up a few didgeridoos there as well.
Amazing. I have a didgeridoo behind me as well. It's always fun to bring out at parties. just rip and didge,
Yeah, right.
It's good. It's good. All right. Next question. Besides the fish fry, back in the rock band days, what is the most unusual place you played in a rock band or played on stage? And in addition to that, the coolest place.
The coolest place. It's so long ago now. I mean, it isn't as though, once again, these were, I could tell you some of the most fun places.
Yeah, fun places. Yeah, fun places.
Before I made the wholehearted leap into film scoring, my band had a brief tour of Europe, as the jazz musicians do in the summer, right? Usually those festivals are June and July. And what was really fun was playing in Pori, outside of Helsinki, Finland, because it's this great festival on an island, and you realize that the country is shrouded in darkness most of the year, but we were there when the sun sets at 10 p.m. and comes up at 1 p.m. So this just means all these beautiful blonde Finnish people just party. It's like crazy. It's continual, and families and all that. And it was probably the most joyous festival I can remember.
That's cool. Oh my goodness. Doing it in Finland. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I have a serious question for you now. Very serious. Is it mandatory to do an air guitar with Billy Gibbons in an elevator?
You're referring to the conversation we had prior to this. I was mentioning that we were in Austin, and I just a week and a half ago, and I rode down the elevator with Billy Gibbons, and it's unmistakable. It's the morning, right? So he's kind of in his pajamas with the skull cap, and there's only one Billy Gibbons. So I couldn't resist the temptation. How are you? How are you this fine day, Mr. Gibbons?
They just gave you an air guitar salute.
Yeah, no. I could have gone off on it, but I didn't. There wasn't that much of a conversation. I think he was still coming too. But
that's great. That's great.
Probably performing in the 4th of July, but it's unmistakable. I suppose you're always surprised.
Yes.
I was surprised. I was a little surprised at how actually slight he is, and perhaps how old he is now. But again, I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen with actors. They're going, how are they even going to find the set? How are they even going to get to where they're going? Can they even walk? And then the red light comes on, and the light just shines out. It's an amazing experience. So
That's
I think that's a special gift.
that is a special gift. Are there any particular music moments, music swells, music cues in films that have stuck with you over the years, not just from your own catalog, but other movies you've seen?
Well, I suppose there's these sort of watershed moments where some composer is doing something really different that you haven't heard or haven't had the opportunity to hear in conjunction with film. And that makes an impression where somebody really steps outside the box. I mean, for a long time, the sort of John Williams narrative approach to scoring was de facto. And whether it was a romantic comedy or whether it was a drama or whether it was an action adventure music, the palette was pretty much the same. And the devices used were pretty much the same. So when somebody steps outside the box, your ears perk up. I mean, early on, it would be things like scores like Jerry Goldsmith, Planet of the Apes. Okay. Certainly moving forward when Thomas Newman hit the scene, with something like The Player, the idea of including an improvisatory or what appears to, well, no, I kind of know it for a fact, as an improvisatory ensemble in conjunction with an orchestra, and having that with a very, very tasteful palette of sound design as well thrown in. That was a mix that was new at the time and is still, influencing in its own ways a lot of things even you hear today. I think that sometimes it's it's about the filmmaker being brave. I mean, Stanley Kubrick with 2001, with The Shining, not necessarily even using film composers per se, but just that pairing. And same way with There Will Be Blood, right? And the Johnny Greenwood stuff with the strings. It's like, wow. Here's this drama set in the late 1800s with Penderecki. It's like, yeah, that's cool, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody thought of that. I think heard things recently, what Nicholas Bertel is doing with, say, Underground Railroad, where you have essentially a very beautifully told story, filmically, but yet there's these very well laid opportunities. It's not like there's no wall to wall. There's just particular scenes that just go on visually. And that the music is so appropriate, but classical in its influence, which again is kind of throws it into this other world, makes it very, very otherworldly, and goes along with this sort of Garcia 100 Years of Solitude type of story, really.
The magical realism. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. They're great combinations, and again, a lot of it has to do with the imagination of the filmmaker to allow for that to occur.
Right. And I love that you brought up Kubrick, because his element of having the classical music with every one of his films is amazing, except for Full Metal Jacket, which was, the Vietnam pop music, rock music of the time. But, when you mentioned The Shining in 2001, those scores are, that classical side you talked about is amazing. And in particular with 2001, to really round this whole discussion up back to the beginning, that main theme of 2001 Space Odyssey, when the titles come up, one of the best pro wrestlers in the world, Ric Flair, that's his theme music every time he came out. It all comes back.
It's there for the taking, I suppose. Right.
Yes, for sure.
He introduced Strauss to a whole new generation.
Correct. And that wraps up this episode. Joseph LoDuca, thank you so much for coming on the show. The spotlight is on you now. Tell all the listeners, all the viewers, where they can find you online, find your music.
Yeah. It's out there. It's certainly there's quite a bit on iTunes. There's quite a bit on. I haven't been as active on my site. I do have some new projects to talk about. Harry's is one of them. The release of Leverage Redemption on Amazon this month, and right now I'm starting work on Chucky. There's a series Don Mancini is doing on Chucky, which is a combination. It'll be on Sci-Fi Channel and USA because it has a YA bent to it, in that Chucky's let loose in a suburban middle school. So
I'm very excited for this new series with the crew coming back, and I love that original score when the composer sings. It's just a great, eerie composer, and I am looking forward to your work and tackling Chucky. Very excited about this, and hopefully,
yeah, me too.
And hopefully, we'll get to talk again when that comes out.
Okay, yeah, probably about October, something like that.
Amazing. And then just for fun, we could get Harry in on it too, and it would be fun.
Harry, we should talk about Hereafter.
Yes.
Talk about Hereafter.
For sure. But yeah, thank you again for joining the Celebrity Podcast, and have a great rest of the day.
So nice to meet you, Bryan.
So nice to meet you.